Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a massive, sweeping narrative that traces thousands of years of biblical lore and history. We're going to explore how an incredibly interconnected story, starting all the way from the dawn of creation and stretching right up to the Roman Empire, sets the stage for one of the most famous historical figures in the world, Jesus Christ.
Right out of the gate, the source material throws this deeply mysterious philosophical quote at us. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. It completely anchors the foundation for everything we're about to cover. But what on earth does the Word actually mean? Well, tuck that in the back of your mind because we are going on a huge historical journey just to answer that exact question.
To get there, we've got a pretty epic roadmap today. We'll be looking at the creation and fall, the era of floods and scattered nations, the origins of Israel, the shift into kingdoms and Roman rule, the actual birth of Jesus, and finally, we'll decode the meaning of the word. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Part 1, the creation and fall. According to the text, human history kicks off with a cycle of absolute perfection that, tragically, falls straight into corruption. The source sets the scene in the Garden of Eden. God creates Adam and then Eve, and gives them literally just one simple rule to follow. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. But deceived by a serpent who promised the fruit would make them just like God, they broke the rule. Because of this, they were banished. And this one single act, the text emphasizes, is what introduced sin, death, and hard labor to the entire human race.
But here's the thing. According to the narrative, it didn't just stop with eating a piece of fruit. Things escalated, and they escalated fast. Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel, both offer sacrifices to God. When Abel's is accepted and Cain's is rejected, this bitter, intense grudge leads Cain to actually murder his own brother. As the population grows, so does the corruption. The earth basically fills up with theft and extreme violence, which deeply saddens God.
Which brings us to Section 2, Floods and Scattered Nations. Things get so bad that the source describes a dramatic, planetary-level intervention.
Seeing all this rampant violence, God decides to just wipe the slate completely clean. He commands a righteous guy named Noah to build a massive ark. Once Noah's family and the animals are locked safely inside, God unleashes exactly 40 days and 40 nights of relentless, heavy rain. Every human outside the ark is wiped out. The earth is cleansed, temporarily at least.
Because human nature being what it is in this text, the cycle basically hits repeat right away. Noah's descendants soon turn their backs on God. Under a leader named Nimrod, whose wife introduces idol and sun worship, humanity bands together to build the massive Tower of Babel, in this huge act of unified rebellion. To shut it down, God fragments their single language, making it impossible to communicate. And this is a fascinating part of the source material. It uses this event to explain the origin of global nations, noting that Noah's son Ham's descendants scattered and expanded all the way into regions like India, China, and Japan.
Moving to Section 3, the origins of Israel. Out of that globally scattered population, the narrative zooms way in. It starts tracing one specific family tree that forms the absolute core of the biblical story.
Following the genealogical line from Noah's son Shem, we hit Abraham. God tells Abraham to pack up, leave his hometown in modern-day Iraq, and travel to Canaan, promising that his descendants will literally outnumber the stars. It seems impossible, but despite his old age, Abraham has a son, Isaac, at 100 years old. Isaac then has a son named Jacob, and right here is a massive turning point. God renames Jacob Israel.
So Jacob, now Israel, goes on to have 12 sons. These guys become the famous foundational clans, or tribes, of the Israelites. You've probably heard of the 11th son, Joseph. His jealous older brothers actually sell him into slavery in Egypt. But this terrible betrayal inadvertently sets up the next huge chapter in history, because a severe famine eventually forces the entire family to relocate to Egypt just to survive.
That brings us to Section 4, Kingdoms and Roman Rule. We're zooming out again, shifting from family drama to massive geopolitical conflicts.
So they were initially safe in Egypt, right? Well, a new pharaoh eventually rises to power and enslaves the booming Israelite population. Try to wrap your head around this. The text highlights that they suffered through a staggering 430 years of brutal slavery. Finally, God chooses Moses to free them, leading an epic escape out of Egypt and delivering the Ten Commandments, which forms the very basis of the Torah.
Once they're finally free and established as a unified kingdom back in Canaan,
things eventually fracture. It's a classic divided kingdom scenario. After King Solomon dies, internal conflicts split the land in two. Up north, the kingdom of Israel consists of 10 clans. Down south, the kingdom of Judah is made up of just 2. And here's a really interesting takeaway from the source. This split is exactly where the term Jews comes from, specifically the people from that southern kingdom of Judah. Divided, they were incredibly weak. Israel fell to the Assyrians, and Judah was taken captive by the Babylonians.
From there, the explainer source describes the region turning into a total geopolitical football. They just get conquered over and over. After the Babylonians came the Persians, then the Greeks, and eventually they land under the heavy, oppressive thumb of the Roman Empire, splintered into 3 distinct regions: Judea, Samaria, and Galilee.
And that perfectly sets the stage for Section 5, the birth of Jesus. It is right in the middle of this incredibly tense, politically oppressed Roman occupation that the narrative introduces the arrival of a promised Savior.
The source points out that for literally hundreds of years, prophets in the Tanakh, or Old Testament, had been predicting this. They firmly believed a Savior was coming to wash away the sins of the world. One specific prophecy highlighted here is from Isaiah 7:14, claiming an absolute miracle. The Messiah would be born to a virgin girl.
So how does the narrative say it went down? Well, the angel Gabriel visits a virgin named Mary in Nazareth and tells her she'll conceive the Son of God. Joseph, the man she's going to marry, is understandably confused, but an angel reassures him in a dream. Because of a mandatory Roman census, they have to make a really difficult journey to Bethlehem. With 0 room at the local inns, Jesus is born in a humble cattle tent, while angels appear in the night sky to guide local shepherds to him. It's a story a lot of us know, but seeing it placed at the end of this massive historical timeline gives it a totally different context.
Which finally leads us to Section 6, the meaning of the word. The source brings us full circle here to explain the ultimate theological why behind these thousands of years of history.
You remember that escalating cycle of sin we talked about at the very beginning? Well, the source argues that humans tried for centuries to make up for it by sacrificing lambs and calves. But it was just never enough to wash away the tremendous corruption that originated all the way back with Adam. Because absolutely no human on earth was perfectly righteous, the narrative states that God himself had to step in as the ultimate perfect sacrifice to finally break that cycle.
And here is where we unlock that mysterious quote from our very first slide. The text claims Jesus is the Word. Think back to the creation story, where God simply spoke things into existence. The narrative equates Jesus with that exact creative spoken force. The source is saying he wasn't just a man born in Bethlehem, he existed with Jehovah God before the earth was even formed. He is the ultimate source of creation, stepping directly into the physical timeline to save humanity.
But the explainer leaves us with this huge, dramatic paradox to ponder. If he was the Messiah prophesied in their very own texts, arriving to save them from sin and Roman oppression, why was he ultimately rejected and crucified by the exact people he came to save? It really invites us to question the deep historical, political, and theological complexities of a story that, regardless of your personal beliefs, undeniably continues to shape our world today. So what do you think?